it's Nikki here and welcome to a Bookish Friday video. So today's video is my March wrap up. So these are all the books that I read during the month of March. Let's start off with some statistics first. So in March I read 19 books. That might have something to do with the current situation, but you know, all clouds have silver linings and all that. I also listened to 39 hours and 31 minutes of audiobooks, and page count was 5,830 pages of physical books. So it was a good month for me, a very, very good month. So in star ratings, I had no 1 stars, which is what we like to hear. There was 2 2-stars, 6 3-stars, 7 4-stars and 4 5-stars. In genres, I read 2 thrillers. Yay, my first thrillers of the year. I read 1 contemporary. I read no classics this month. Although one of my graphic novels was a classical story, so could count, could not count. I read 2 graphic novels. I read 2 middle grade books, 1 non-fiction, and 11 11 sci-fi and fantasy books, because that's my favourite genre. In the authors, I read 4 books from male authors and 15 from female authors. They are winning out so far. Bindings, I read 7 hardbacks and 7 paperbacks. Obviously, that doesn't count for audiobooks. And the origin of the books that I received was 12 were borrowed. That's either from the local library or through Scribd or Audible or some kind of borrowing site. And 7 were from my physical TBR shelves. In the formats, I read no ebooks this month. I read 5 audiobooks and I read 14 physical books. So those are all my statistics. So let's get into the actual books that I read. So the first book I read was The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh, and this wasn't actually on my TBR for March until I got a message from ALOT saying that they were going to do a special edition of the second book in this series. This was a ALOT edition, and so they're offering their subscribers the second book as a special edition as well. And as I hadn't even read the first book, I thought, maybe I should read that to see if I want to order the second book. So I read it and I really did enjoy it. This is a vampire story, although it's not as vampire-y as, say, like Twilight or other vampire books. It's more like nudges of vampirism. Like, you know they're there, but you're not getting to see them just yet. I think there'll be more vampire, activity in the second book, but this was more like setting it up, letting you know they're around. You can't see them yet, but you know they're there. I really did enjoy this. It is set in New Orleans, and I really like this concept of this young girl has run to New Orleans to escape her past. And if she's found out, she could be in real danger. But is she in more danger now she's in New Orleans where these vampires are? She gets involved with, and I'm not going to say the French version because my French is not very good, but she gets involved with the Court of Lions, and gets very, very interesting. She's very good seamstress, and she gets involved making a dress for someone, and things happen. It's really, really interesting, actually. I am going to order the second book, The Damned, but I'm just not going to pay for the ALOT edition. I don't think I loved it enough to pay the extra money for the special edition ALOT edition. But I am going to buy the second book in this series. I think having the first book in the special edition is more than enough for me. I don't need to get the second book in special edition as well, even though it does have beautiful sprayed edges. No, I'm going to save my pennies and just get the normal version. So yeah, who knows, Waterstones might have a special edition with sprayed edges or something, and I could get that one, who knows. But yeah, really enjoyed it. I did give this one a 4 stars. The next book I read, and I'm just going to go through all the physical books first and then I'll talk about the audiobooks. But the next book I read was Tariff Dawn by Sarah J Maas. This is the 6th book in a 7-book series with an added novella as well, so that's like technically 8 books in the series. A lot of people didn't like this book when it first came out because book 5 ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, and then this book sort of starts meanwhile elsewhere. And I think a lot of people got a bit annoyed with that. They wanted to know what was happening, and this one goes off and follows some characters that had left earlier in the series. So as I say, this follows Kale, and he's going off to this new land called Antica for reasons you will find out when you read it. I love this series. I adore this series now. I am now the proud owner of the box set of this series. This is a library book, and I've been reading these books through my local library, and up until about book 4 I was happy to consume these books through my local library and have it as that. But the further along through the series I got, the more and more I was thinking, I want to own these and reread them whenever I want, not have to worry about having to get them out of the library. I want my own copies, and yeah, I am now the proud owner of a beautiful box set. I love this story, full of intrigue, full of lots of different characters. Sarah J Maas is very, very good at writing characters that you just fall in love with, and yeah, I can't tell you too much about this particular book because spoilers, being 6th in the series, it's a lot of spoilers, but just know that I highly recommend this series if you love fantasy romance. If you don't like romance in your stories, you will not like this series. Stay away from it, because romance is what Sarah J Maas does very, very well, and she's a master of her craft. And yeah, but if you don't mind romance, or you love romance in your stories, this is definitely a fantasy series I recommend you should read. So yes, I loved that one. This one I also gave a 4 stars. The next book I read was one of my graphic novels. This is Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. The fact that the main character is called Lissa, which is very close to Melissa, my daughter, really intrigued me with this one, really pulled me in. And in fact, actually, I am aware that there is also a novel of this, well, a whole series of Vampire Academy books. So I am going to look out for them second hand. I don't think I'll purchase them brand new unless I can find a really good offer on a box set or something. But I am very intrigued to read this, the novels of this book. I really liked the artwork in this graphic novel. That was really good, and I liked the fact that in this vampire story there are different types of vampires. We had this explanation that there was more than one type of vampire in this story, so I really like that twist on the vampire story for this one. I gave this one a 3 stars. The next book I read was Starsight, which is the sequel to Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. I did read Skyward last year and was very excited to get to this one. This is a sci-fi story about a young girl who is she becomes like a fighter pilot against these alien races, and To be honest, I was quite surprised that the first book actually interested me as much as it did, because I am not a sci-fi reader. I love fantasy, but sci-fi, especially sci-fi regarding aliens and space, really I just don't get on with them as well. But the Skyward, the first book in this series, really gripped my interest, and so I was very interested in reading the second one. However, this one just slightly fell for me a little bit. I wasn't as interested in this one. I did like some of the characters. Some of the characters in here were adorable, and at one point my heart was ripped out of my chest with this one. But we were okay in the end. We were okay in the end. It didn't fail me. But yeah, I don't know. I just this one didn't excite me as much as the first one did. I was really interested in the first one. But I mean, I will be purchasing this book anyway in the future when it comes out in paperback, because I think it's only in hardback at the moment. But in the future I will be getting this in paperback, because I already own Skyward in paperback, so I will be purchasing this again. I am trying to sort of start a collection of Brandon Sanderson's work, because I do love his storytelling. So yeah, I gave this one a 3 stars. The next book was a buddy read, and if anyone is interested in having a buddy read with me, just let me know. But I read Hush Hush by Becca Fitzpatrick with Charlotte from Wacky World of Lottie. Okay, so this is a book about fallen angels, and it is cheesy. It is cheesy as cheese hell, but I loved it. I flew through this. I had written up a reading schedule for me and Charlotte to read this over a week, and I read it in 2 days because I just couldn't put it down. It was just so much fun and so easy. It's also a really floppy back. I just flew through it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was just an easy, cheesy read. Loved it. And for that I gave it 4 stars. No, it's not the greatest writing I've ever heard or read, but it was easy, and it was just what I needed, to be honest. When you're reading a lot of heavy fantasy, something like this is just a real nice icebreaker, a real you know, when in between heavy courses in dinner you have a bit of sorbet just to freshen the buds a bit. That's what this kind of book is. It's like a sorbet for the rest of the meal. That's what it's like. So 4 stars for that. The next book is another graphic novel, which you could say was kind of a classic, because it is Dracula. Dracula is my favourite classic novel that I have read so far. Granted, I haven't read an awful lot of classics, but so far this one is my favourite. I read the book of Dracula last year and fell in love, and I picked up the graphic novel before the libraries all closed, hoping that I would enjoy Dracula in the graphic novel form. And I did. Oh, I did. It was so nice to be back in this story. I absolutely loved it. The artwork in here is spectacular. I loved it so much. And this copy follows the original text. So this brand of comics called Classical Comics, they do classic novels in 2 different texts. You have the classic original text, which is where they stick to the wording of the original text, hence original text, or they do quick text, which is where they put the speech into more modern type of way of speaking. And this one was the original text, so it kept that original classical speech. And seriously, I want to own a copy of this myself, so that when I feel the need to be back in the Dracula world that I love so, so, so much, I can pick up the graphic novel and just delve into it, and I'm still in, still in this world. I loved it so, so much. The artwork, the wording, the story. A lot of people think Dracula is about a vampire in a castle in Transylvania. It's not. It's about so much more. In fact, Dracula is barely in the book Dracula. The main character, I would say, in Dracula is actually Van Helsing and a young girl called Mina. Those are the two main characters in Dracula, in my opinion. And Dracula follows storylines set in Transylvania, in Whitby, UK, in London, UK, and then back to Transylvania. It travels all over, and I love the story of this. So I gave it 5 stars. Of course I did. I loved it. I loved being back in this world. It was... I loved it. I mean, look! That is just awesome! I want to own a copy of this so badly. Like, it's in my Amazon cart. I know that for a fact. Okay, and the next book. Oh, every time I hold this book makes me want to cry. Every time. It is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 7th and final book in the Throne of Glass series. So this is the book that comes after Tower of Dawn. Not only is this book the end of a wonderful and amazing series, in my opinion, but it brings together lots of different storylines that you've been following throughout the other 6 books, and it pulls them all in together to this one final epic battle. Think the final battle scene in Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. It's that kind of epicness. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but not everyone survives. Don't cry. Sarah J. Maas made me fall in love with all of her characters, and she pushed me to the edge. She led me to the edge of the cliff and then pulled me back again and then pushed me right over. I sobbed, ugly sobs, like I had to physically put this book down and take 5 minutes to calm myself down. And then I started reading again, and then she just ripped my heart straight out of my chest all over again. I was devastated. This book broke me. It was when I finished this book that I went straight onto Amazon and clicked buy for the box set. Like, it was that much that I loved this book. If I could give this book 10 stars, I would. This is my book of the month, FYI. It was beautiful. It was just stunning and heart-wrenching and epic, and just, if you are asking me, should I read it? Yes, 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 yes. Just for this book alone. Like, this is worth reading the other 6 books for, just to get to this book. It is beautiful, stunning. I loved it. Broke my heart. I can put it down now because I am going to cry ugly tears. The next 2 books I'm going to show you, I'm not going to talk too much about because I did a whole reading vlog about them, and that is The Hollow by Jessica Verde and The Couple Next Door by Cherie Lapina. I did do a reading vlog on these, so you can watch that if you want to know my exact thoughts on these 2. But I gave The Hollow 3 stars and The Couple Next Door, 2 stars. I did also read an audiobook in that series, in that video as well, which was The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini, and I gave that 5 stars because I truly really enjoyed that one. But if you want to know my thoughts on those 3 books, then just go and watch that video. I'm sure I will link it somewhere for you down below or at the end of the video. The next book I read was A Pinch of Magic by Michelle Harrison. This is the first book, and I think it's going to be a trilogy. This is a story about 3 sisters who have 3 magical items, and they are cursed to live on this island and never ever leave. And they go off on an adventure to try and break that curse. This is middle grade fun. It's just light and fluffy, and I guess for a child it would be kind of scary and spooky, but for an adult, you know, everybody's going to be okay. But it was a really, really nice read. I was a little disappointed because on the back of the book there's a picture of a mermaid. I can assure you there was no mermaids in this. I was deeply disappointed. As a fan of mermaids, don't put pictures of mermaids on books if you don't intend to have mermaids in the book. But yeah, I did really enjoy this. I am going to be reading A Sprinkle of Sorcery, which is the 2nd book in the month of April. So yes, there was a live discussion with the Middle Grade Monthly team, which is Gavin and Jade, and they had the special guest of Michelle Harrison talking about these books on that live show. I only watched the first half where they discussed A Pinch of Magic, because in the second half when they discussed Sprinkle of Sorcery, I haven't read Sprinkle of Sorcery at that point, so I haven't watched the rest of that video yet. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I gave this a 4 stars. Now, due to the current situation, my book club that I run every month has been cancelled for the foreseeable future because it is for the over 50s. So obviously they are in a very vulnerable group at the moment. So sadly, I will have no book club read for next month, for the month of April, but I did finish off the book that we chose for March, which is Before I Go to Sleep by S.J. Watson. This is a thriller about a young lady, or a middle-aged lady should I say, who loses her memory every day. So she remembers throughout the day what is happening, but as soon as she goes to sleep and wakes up in the morning, she forgets who she is. She does remember up to a certain part of her life, so she can remember being like a young 19, 20-year-old, but after that she can't remember much, and she wakes up every day next to this man who claims to be her husband. And yeah, it's a bit of a thriller. I will say that at the beginning of this, it's very repetitive. She wakes up, she wonders who this man is, she has to figure out who she is and what she's doing and why she's like this, and it's the same thing every day. And then the sort of like last third of the book, I want to say, is where the real thriller starts to get its grip. And yeah, it kind of was a slow burn for the beginning, and I was almost going to DNF it at one point. But the other ladies, they messaged me and said, no, Nicola, you really need to finish it. It does get interesting. So I pushed through and I finished it. It did only get a 3 star from me. I'm just not in the mood for thrillers. I don't know what it is. I'm just not in the mood. Sorry. The next book, again, wasn't on my TBR for March, but I read it anyway because I got this in my Fairy Loot box for February, which was The Shadows Between Us by Tricia Levenseller. I was so excited when I got this. If you saw the video, you'll have seen. This was exactly what I would hoped it to be. We have a non-likable main character. She's hard and she doesn't care. Like, she got dumped by an ex-boyfriend and she wasn't happy about that, so she killed him. And ever since then, she has been on this kind of I guess, journey to take what she wants from men and not give anything back in return. Why should she? And she comes up with a plan where she's going to woo the king, marry the king, and then kill the king so she can become queen of the kingdom and rule all. Because why not? The only problem is, when she gets close to the king, she realises somebody else is trying to kill him, so she kind of has to save him in order for her to be able to kill him herself. But it doesn't happen like that. I love this. Instead of this, you know, damsel in distress, no. She is the one making the hard decisions. She is the one. Slytherin. Think Slytherin, and that is the character you have. She's not a nice character. She doesn't do nice things, but you still kind of like her, or I did anyway. I like a villain, and in this story, the villain was kind of the main character, and I loved that. Give me more of that. I want more villains stories. Like, who needs a hero? I don't want a chosen one. I want a villain. And this was exactly what it says on the tin. I loved it. I gave this 5 stars. Truly, it's just, yes. Yes. Loved it. The next book I read, because there is a read-along going with these books, and I read Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. So this is the illustrated edition. It has some beautiful pictures inside. Let me try and find you one. So it has beautiful pictures inside. Absolutely beautiful edition. Yeah, there is a read along with this called The Elder Lingalong. I just like saying that word. And this is a story about a young boy who is actually the bastard son of the prince. And he is brought into the king's castle and kind of trained as an assassin's apprentice. He is in a special sort of position where he's special enough to be in the king's household, but not special enough to be a danger kind of thing. He's in a unique position, and this is kind of like his coming of age story. So there are a few events in here which are kind of they pull at your heartstrings a little bit. He has an affinity with animals, which I really liked, and he has a couple of relationships with certain people that I thought were really like heartwarming and sweet and lovely, and some characters in here that I'm hoping are going to be in future books in this series, because I believe this is the start of like a 12-book series, but they're broken down into sets of trilogies, which is really helpful of Robin Hobb. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I did give this one a 4 stars. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Really enjoyed that one. And the last book that I read, I finished on the very last day of the month, and that was The Lost Magician by Pierce Torday. This book. I read The Frozen Sea back in February and absolutely fell in love with it. And when I saw The Lost Magician in my local library, I snapped it up. And then realised that this is actually the first book in the Lost Magician series, and that The Frozen Sea is book 2. So I kind of read these back to front. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter because both were stories within their own rights. So this book follows similar storyline to The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. In fact, extremely closely the story of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. So if you liked that story, you will love this story. I did annotate it. You can see all my little tabs there, because when I read The Frozen Sea, I found myself wanting to annotate that book and not really knowing or understanding how or what to do with it. So I kind of made a bit more of an effort with this one. I made a little key in the front of the book, just in pencil. I don't know if you can see that, just in pencil. So I had purple tabs were references to other books, because in this land there are other stories being referenced. Blue tabs were characters from other books, again because there were characters from other books in here. Green tabs are for world building, orange tabs were for plot points, pink tabs were for character building, and the yellow tabs were for observations, so things that I kind of like wanted to make a note of but wasn't quite sure what sort of other tab to put it under. This story just, I love Piers Torday's writing. It's simple, it's funny, and it's just an enjoyable magical read. It's kind of writing in a simpler way but still magical and whimsical, and I loved it. I loved it so much. I did give this a 4 stars. This wasn't as wonderful and amazing as The Frozen Sea. Maybe if I'd have read this one first and then The Frozen Sea, this might have been the 5 stars and Frozen Sea might have been the 4 stars. It could have been that The Frozen Sea got a 5 stars because it was the first time I had come across this whimsical, magical writing of Piers Torday. And obviously by this book I was already accustomed to that, so it didn't blow me away as much. I don't know, but I loved this story. And as I say, I got a copy from the local library, and as soon as I realised it was the first book in the series, I immediately went out and purchased my own copy. So this is actually my own copy. I would never ever write or tab in a library book, so because that's not mine, it's not, you know, I don't have the right to do that. But this is my own copy now, and the library book is ready to go back to the library as soon as they reopen. So but I get to keep this copy alongside The Frozen Sea, and they will look absolutely stunning together. The front cover, the cover of this is absolutely stunning. Look at that. It's just, love it. I love it. I love it. So that is that one. That was, as I say, 4 stars. So those were all the physical books that I read. Let's move on to the audiobooks that I read. So I read The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. That is the novella of the Throne of Glass series, and I read this via audio. And I got it from Audible website because it's not actually available on Scribd. The audiobook is exclusive to Audible, so I did have to subscribe to Audible for that. But I got a special offer, so it only cost me $3.99, so that was fine. I do prefer Scribd to Audible though, because with Scribd I can get more books for my money, whereas Audible I can only have 1 credit a month for $7.99 normally, but as I say, I got mine on special offer for $3.99, but I can still only get 1 book for that. So, but then again, I get to keep the book. The book remains on my Amazon Fire for me to reread it whenever I want to, whereas with Scribd you kind of have to return them. So yeah, The Assassin's Blade, as I say, is a novella, and it's kind of broken up into little short stories, and it kind of gives you a little bit of a backstory about characters that you will meet in the Throne of Glass series. I would say that you don't have to read The Assassin's Blade. You could get away with not reading that in the series, but I'm glad that I did read it because it did kind of explain to me a few things that happened in the main part of the series, and yeah, it just helped to build the world and the characters a lot more, and yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I gave that one a 4 stars. The next audiobook that I listened to was The Siren by Kira Cass, and you guessed it, it was about a mermaid. This this was a new take on mermaids. This was a story about a young girl who is in the middle of a shipwreck. Her ship is going down and she begs for her life, and the sea answers her. So the sea is its own character, its own personality, and the sea does a deal with her and says, if you become one of my sirens for 100 years, after that 100 years you can be free and live again. So she makes this deal and she becomes a siren, which is basically when the sea calls for her and the other sirens, because there are other girls as well who've made this deal. When the sea calls, the sirens go into the sea, they sing and cause a shipwreck, and then the lives that are lost to the sea then feed the sea somehow. And then she can go off and do what she likes for a bit. However, she's not allowed to speak. She's not allowed to speak to humans. She can only sing in the sea. She can speak to the other sirens, but if her voice is heard by another human, then that human will die. It was very interesting and a new take on like the Little Mermaid story that I've not ever really read before. It was very interesting and really good writing as well. So yeah, I'm looking for a copy of that. Oh, my bookshelves, they're going to start bowing soon. There's going to be too much on there. So yeah, I gave that a 3 stars. As I say, I read The Kite Runner, and I've already told you I gave that 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. Again, watch the reading vlog for that if you want to know more details about my thoughts on that. And then I read a book called The Memory Thief by Lauren Manzi on Scribd. It was only a 6.5 hour long audiobook, and it was a really interesting story about a world where memories are kind of the currency of the land. You can sell a memory in order to get things for yourself. And the main character in this world is a young girl who has the ability to steal people's memories without them knowing about it. And she's trying to save her mother, who is comatose in a hospital because she has sort of regressed into her memories. And the authorities are trying to sell her mother's memories in order to pay for her stay in hospital, and this young girl is trying to save her mother. It was really interesting. As I say, it was only 6.5 hours long, so I'm guessing that the physical book probably wouldn't be many pages, so there wasn't a lot of world building. I kind of wish that there was. This might be one that if I saw it second hand, I might pick it up and reread it, because it was a very interesting synopsis and idea. But yeah, I gave that a 3 stars. And the final audiobook that I listened to for the month, well, one category of books that I extremely rarely read is poetry. And the reason for that is because A, I don't own any poetry. Oh, no, I own 1 book of poetry. But 2 if you count Paradise Lost. Anyway, modern poetry is the reason why I don't read a lot of poetry. I just don't get it. The last book that I listened to this month was Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. I don't know. Kaur, Rupi Kaur, or Rupi Kaur. It's a modern poetry book about rape and feminism and woman power and all of the things that I guess young women of today would need to hear, you know, about how our bodies are our own and nobody should be allowed to touch it or harm it if we don't give them permission to. It just, it, I just, I just don't get modern poetry. If it doesn't rhyme, I don't enjoy it. I just, it's just words. I tried to read a modern poetry book last year and did not like it at all. I think I gave it 1 star. So I thought maybe modern poetry should be heard rather than read. So I thought that's why I picked up the audiobook for this Milk and Honey, because I thought, well, this is how it should be heard, should be consumed. No, I still didn't enjoy it. I only gave it 2 stars because I didn't want my rating on Goodreads. I think I might have rated it as 3 on Goodreads, but rated it as 2 in my book, simply because I don't want my bad rating of this book to bring it down for other people to read it, because I think that the subject matter is important for young women to read. But my personal enjoyment of it was more like a 1.5 stars. I put it down as a 2, but I didn't like it. It bores me. And to be honest, the subject matter of rape and the mistreatment of women made me feel uncomfortable to listen to as well. So not my cup of tea. Sorry to end on a bad book, but it wasn't a bad book. I just didn't like it. So that is it. That is all of the books that I read in March. There was an awful lot there. There probably will be an awful lot in April, considering that A, I am doing the Owls readathon, and B, we are all stuck indoors and not allowed to go out. So yes, plenty of time for me to read. So that is it. That is my March wrap up. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe as always, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!